Level 1. The keys. You are not born powerful, you are not even born visible. On your first night inside the inner palace, you carry a wooden tray through a corridor where the lanterns hang low, the curtains are thick, and every red door looks like it is hiding a different kind of danger. Women in pale silk pass without looking at you. Guards stand near the gates without speaking. Somewhere beyond the walls, the throne hall rises bright and distant. But here in the inner court, power does not sound like drums or royal commands. It sounds like a lock turning. You are assigned to the old palace eunuch, a man with a narrow face, silver hair, and eyes that seem to have watched 3 generations of secrets rot behind closed doors. He does not ask your name first, he asks whether you can remember the sound of footsteps. You think he is mocking you. Then a court lady passes at the far end of the corridor and he says, "Empress's household, angry, trying not to hurry." A moment later, another servant appears with a covered box. "Favorite concubine's chamber, afraid, carrying something heavier than cloth." You stare at him, but he only lifts one thin hand and drops a ring of keys into your palm. The metal is cold, heavier than it looks, and each key is shaped differently. One for the servant's gate, one for the medicine corridor, one for the side archive, one for the passage that no map admits exists. "You think you are here to open doors?" he says. "That is what fools think." He turns toward the long corridor of red gates where women wait. Ministers whisper, and messages die if they arrive too late. The throne is far away. The doors are closer. You close your fingers around the keys. For the first time you understand that a man with no rank can still stand between desire and permission, between a secret and the person who needs it, between a woman's survival and a door that does not open. And in the inner palace, that may be the beginning of power. Level 2, Inner Gates. By dawn, the old eunuch begins teaching you the geography of power, and none of it is drawn on a map. The inner palace is not one place. It is a series of thresholds, each one guarded by ritual, timing, fear, and someone's private hunger. The first gate opens to the servants' court, where girls with laundry baskets lower their heads and move quickly, because being slow is noticed and being noticed is dangerous. The second gate leads to the concubine's corridor, where the air smells of powder, warm tea, and jealousy hidden under perfume. The third gate stands before the Empress's wing, polished so carefully that every servant who passes can see their own frightened face in the wood. Farther in, beyond a bend watched by 2 silent guards, is the narrow passage toward the Emperor's private rooms. You are not allowed to enter there yet. You are barely allowed to look. The old eunuch walks beside you with the ring of keys tucked inside his sleeve, and every time he stops, the corridor seems to hold its breath. "A key is only metal," he says. "The real question is whether the door should open now, later, or never." You see what he means before the morning is over. A young concubine arrives at the second gate with flushed cheeks and a folded petition hidden beneath her sleeve. She says she has permission to pass. Her maid says the message is urgent. The guard looks at the old eunuch. The old eunuch looks at the incense stick burning near the wall. It has nearly finished, but not quite. "Too early?" he says. The concubine's face changes. "Only by a moment." He does not move. A moment is enough. She waits. The incense burns down. Somewhere deeper inside the palace, another woman is admitted first. By the time the gate opens, the young concubine's chance has already passed. No one raises a sword. No one shouts. No one calls it punishment. But as she walks through with pale lips and lowered eyes, you understand that a closed door does not need anger to ruin a life. It only needs timing. Level 3, who enters? By the third day, the old eunuch gives you a post at the side door beside the inner court, where people pass when they do not want to be remembered. Do not write anything, he tells you. Paper can be stolen. Memory must be trained. So you stand beneath a low lantern with the ring of lesser keys at your waist, watching the palace move through a narrow wooden frame. A maid from the Empress's wing passes with a covered tray, and says it carries medicine. You smell ink. A young servant from the favorite concubine's chamber carries folded silk, but one sleeve hangs heavier than the other. A guard from the western gate asks for entry to deliver a verbal report. Yet his boots are too clean for a man who claims to have crossed the outer courtyard in rain. Every face has a reason. Every reason may be false. At first your head aches from trying to hold everything. The hour, the object, the voice, the hand that trembles, the eye that avoids the door. But the old eunuch returns at sunset and begins asking questions, as if he has been standing beside you the whole day. Who came after the second bell? The Empress's maid. What did she carry? Medicine. What did it smell like? You hesitate. Ink. His eyes sharpen. Good, medicine does not smell like fresh ink, unless someone has written before hiding it. He asks about the guard, the folded silk, the servant who walked too quickly, the court lady who smiled before giving her name. You answer some correctly and miss others. He strikes your knuckles lightly with his closed fan. Not hard, but enough to make you remember the pain, with the lesson. People think doors keep out bodies, he says. Wrong. Doors saw intentions. That night you see the Empress's maid again, returning without the tray and walking slower than before. You do not stop her. You only remember, and for the first time you understand that the inner palace is not built from walls. It is built from who enters, who waits, who lies, and who is allowed to leave before the lie is discovered. Level 4. The message, your first message, is not written on paper. That is what makes it dangerous. The old eunuch calls you to a narrow room behind the kitchen corridor, where steam gathers under the beams and servants pass outside carrying bowls, trays, and folded cloth. He does not hand you a scroll. He only says one sentence and makes you repeat it, until every word sits exactly where it should. The plum blossom opens late when the northern wind is false. It sounds like poetry, and that is why it can survive the hallways. Say it once, he tells you. To the young concubine in the blue chamber. No extra words, no explanation. Do not look proud because you carry meaning. Meaning makes men careless. You walk through the rear passage with your eyes lowered, feeling the sentence burn, hotter than any sealed letter could. A written message can be hidden, torn, burned, denied. A spoken one can live only inside your memory. And if you change one word, you may change a life. The blue chamber sits near the end of the concubine's corridor, where the lanterns are softer and the guards pretend not to listen. The young concubine waits behind a half-open screen dressed in pale blue silk. Her face calm but her fingers tight around a handkerchief. When you repeat the sentence, her eyes close for one breath. Not fear, relief. Then she turns to her maid and says, "Cancel the visit to the western garden." Nothing else. No question. No thanks, no visible reaction. You bow and leave, but the meaning follows you back through the corridor. Later, the old eunuch tells you what the sentence did. The northern wind was a court lady from the Empress's household. The late plum blossom was a meeting that would have trapped the young concubine with a forged gift. By carrying one harmless phrase at the right hour, you moved her away from danger without leaving proof that anyone warned her. You stare at the ring of keys at your waist and understand that access is not only doors. Sometimes it is a mouth, a memory, a phrase delivered before someone steps into a room prepared for their ruin. Level 5 Hidden Roots. The old eunuch teaches you the hidden roots only after he is certain you understand ordinary doors. A fool thinks a locked gate is the only kind of barrier, he says, leading you behind a faded screen in an unused side hall. His thin fingers press against a carved wooden panel shaped like clouds, and a narrow passage opens where a wall should have been. The air inside smells of damp wood, old incense, and dust trapped for years. You follow him with a small lantern, ducking beneath low beams. Hearing the palace above you, continue as if nothing exists beneath its polished floors. He shows you the passage behind the Empress's outer chamber, where sound travels through the wall if people speak too close to the screen. He shows you the servants' stair, that reaches the medicine room faster than the main corridor. He shows you the covered walkway where the Emperor sometimes passes without procession, without drums, without witnesses, except those wise enough to pretend they saw nothing. Each route has a purpose. One lets a message arrive before a rumor. One lets a woman escape a room without admitting she was ever there. One lets an order be delayed long enough for another order to become law. You ask how many people know all these paths. The old eunuch stops beneath a low arch and looks at you for so long that the lantern flame seems to shrink. Too many once, he says. Fewer now. You do not ask what happened to the others. The answer is in the cold passage, in the sealed doors, in the way he remembers without explaining. Later, you see why the lesson matters. A female official from the Empress's wing appears at one end of a forbidden side corridor, moving toward the Emperor's private passage before the favorite concubine's messenger can arrive through the proper gate. You recognize the timing. You recognize the danger. The old eunuch does not tell you what to do. He only watches. So you take the shorter stair, reach the side latch first, and close it from within. The female official stops on the other side, silent. No accusation can be made. No law has been broken. A door that was never supposed to exist simply refuses to open. When you return, the old eunuch takes the lantern from your hand and nods once. That is the only praise he gives. But now you understand why hidden routes are both privilege and sentence. Whoever knows the shortest path between two powerful people can decide whether they meet, whether they wait, or whether history turns before they arrive. Level 6. Women's War. By the 6th week, you stop thinking of the inner palace as a place of rooms and begin seeing it as a battlefield made of timing. No swords are drawn. No blood stains the polished floor. But every morning women move against one another through doors, trays, greetings, delayed messages and invitations that arrive just late enough to insult. The Empress's chamber sends a court lady to the medicine room before dawn. The favorite concubine's maid waits outside the side archive with a folded sleeve that is too stiff to be only fabric. A princess's attendant asks which route is shortest to the Queen Mother's palace, then pretends she never asked. By now everyone has begun to notice you standing near the gates with keys at your waist and silence trained into your face. They do not call you powerful. That would be too honest. They call you useful. A court lady from the Empress's wing asks you to open the second gate slowly, because Her Majesty does not wish a certain guest to arrive too soon. An old maid from the favourite's chamber asks whether the medicine corridor can be left unlatched for one breath after sunset. A princess's servant slips a sweet cake onto your tray and says her mistress only wants to know who visited the records room after the third bell. Each request sounds small, each one bends the palace a little. You bring these things to the old eunuch, expecting him to tell you which woman is right. He laughs once, dry as old paper. Right? He says. You still think this is about right? Then he points toward the layered gates outside the window. The Empress protects authority. The favorite protects survival. The princess protects tomorrow. The Queen Mother protects yesterday. All of them will call their hunger duty. That afternoon you delay one door by half a breath and open another before a maid has time to turn away. A rumour misses its target. A warning arrives first. A woman who expected to be cornered is already gone when her enemies enter the room. No one thanks you. No one accuses you. But as the sun fades behind the red walls, you understand the war at last. In the inner palace, a closed door can wound. An open door can betray. And a man who holds the keys can pretend he is only standing still while the whole battlefield moves through his hands. Level 7, Emperor's Door. The first time you stand near the Emperor's door, you understand why even powerful women lower their voices before reaching it. The corridor is wider here, cleaner, brighter, and more terrifying than any passage in the inner palace. Gold lanterns burn without smoke. The floor is polished enough to reflect your face. 2 imperial guards stand at the far end without moving, but it is the closed door itself that makes everyone careful. Behind it is the man whose attention can raise a woman, erase a family, restore a title, or make a truth vanish before sunset. The old eunuch places 3 messages in your hands. 1 folded silk note from the Empress's chamber, 1 narrow verbal report from the favorite concubine's maid, and 1 sealed record request from the Queen Mother's palace. Which silence enters first? He asks. You think he means which message matters most. Then you realize he is asking something colder. If the Empress's note enters first, the Emperor hears authority before danger. If the favorite's report enters first, he hears fear before control. If the Queen Mother's record request enters first, everyone else's message becomes smaller under the weight of the past. You are not allowed to choose policy. You are not allowed to advise the throne. You are barely allowed to breathe loudly in this corridor. Yet the order in your hands may decide what the Emperor believes before he speaks to anyone. A young chamberlain approaches and asks what should be presented. Your mouth goes dry. For one moment you feel the temptation of power. To favor the woman who was kind. Punish the one who frightened you. Protect the one whose secrets you understand. Then you remember the old eunuch's first lesson. Door sought intentions. You look at the 3 messages again and choose the one that will force the room to slow down. The Queen Mother's sealed request. The chamberlain disappears behind the door. No drum sounds, no command is shouted. But within moments the Empress's runner stops walking. The favorite's maid lowers her eyes. The old eunuch smiles without warmth. You have learned the most dangerous truth of the Emperor's door. Sometimes the person who controls the first sentence controls the whole conversation. Level 8, Dangerous Silence. The lesson of dangerous silence begins in a small room where letters wait to become fate. It is not a grand place. No phoenix screens, no imperial banners, no carved throne, only shelves of wooden boxes, oil lamps, sealed envelopes, and a narrow table where messages are sorted before they are allowed to move deeper into the palace. The old eunuch brings you there after the Emperor's door and places 1 letter before you. The seal belongs to a young concubine's chamber. Her maid delivered it before dawn with red eyes and shaking hands. You do not open it, but you already know enough. A plea, a warning, a request to be heard before someone stronger writes her story for her. This must reach the Empress before the 2nd bell, you say. The old eunuch looks at you as if you are still very young. Must it? Outside rain taps softly against the closed shutters. He places another object beside the letter. A small black token from the Queen Mother's palace. No words, no explanation. Just a token that means wait, your stomach tightens. If it waits, she may be ruined. If it moves, he says, 3 other doors may open before we know who is standing behind them. You stare at the sealed letter, hating how small it looks. 1 woman's fear folded into paper, 1 life reduced to timing. For the first time, you understand that not opening a door can feel more violent than opening the wrong one. The old eunuch does not force your hand. He only watches as the 2nd bell approaches. At the last moment, you slide the letter into the lower box, not the delivery tray. The sound of wood closing over it is soft, almost kind. That makes it worse. By afternoon, the young concubine's chamber is quiet. Too quiet. Her enemies have not destroyed her. Not yet. But the chance to speak first has passed. That night, you ask the old eunuch whether silence counts as a lie. He answers without looking at you. Silence is older than lying. It does not need a tongue. You look at the keys at your waist, the sealed boxes, the closed door, and understand the darkest part of access. Sometimes power is not deciding who enters. Sometimes it is deciding whose truth arrives too late to save them. Level 9, Master of Access by the 9th month. People stop asking whether you are allowed to stand near a door. They begin asking whether the door will open because you are standing there. No title is placed on your robe. No official decree announces your rise. You still bow when ministers pass. Still lower your eyes before the Empress's attendants. Still step aside when imperial guards move through the corridor. But the palace has learned to measure power by results, not names. A concubine who once ignored you now sends her maid to ask whether the 3rd gate will be watched after sunset. A clerk from the records office slips you a folded request wrapped in plain cloth. A guard captain who outranks you by years pauses before speaking. because he knows the wrong word can make his message arrive after someone else's. You have become the living part of the inner palace no one can map. The pause before permission, the delay before access, the silence between desire and arrival. Late one night, a senior court lady kneels before you near the western passage. The sight unsettles you more than any threat. She is old enough to have ordered men beaten for standing too close to her mistress's door. Yet now her forehead nearly touches the floor. "My lady must see the Empress before dawn," she says. "If she waits until morning, she will be accused before she can answer." Once, you would have thought this was the moment power arrived. Someone kneeling, someone begging, someone needing your hand on a lock. But it does not feel like victory. It feels like standing over a well and deciding who gets water. You open the gate, but only halfway. "She enters alone," you say. The court lady looks up, startled by the condition, then bows again. As she disappears into the corridor, you realize the old eunuch has been watching from the shadow of a pillar. He says nothing for a long time. Then, softly, "Now you understand. Access is never free. Someone always pays for the door." You touch the keys at your side and feel how heavy they have become. Not because they are metal, but because every one of them now sounds like a life-changing. Level 10, every door by dawn. The inner palace begins to open around you like a living machine. One gate unlocks for the kitchen servants, another for the medicine runners, another for the Empress's attendants, who move through the corridor with faces smooth enough to hide panic. Farther in, behind the layered red doors, concubines wait to learn whether the Emperor has called their names, whether the Queen Mother has requested a record, whether a message arrived in time to save them, or too late to matter. You stand in the central passage with the ring of keys at your waist, and for the first time, no one tells you where to stand. They already know. You belong where the doors meet. The old eunuch is beside you, quieter than usual, his silver hair tied neatly, his face pale in the morning light. "Listen," he says. At first, you hear only ordinary sounds: sandals on stone, trays being lifted, locks turning, silk sleeves brushing against wood. Then you hear what he means: a court lady waiting too long before asking permission, a guard captain pretending not to be afraid, a maid breathing too quickly, because the message in her sleeve must arrive before the second bell. The palace is speaking through delay, rhythm, hesitation, and footsteps. Months ago, you would have heard noise. Now you hear need. The old eunuch places his hand over the keys at your side, not to take them, but to feel their weight one last time. "The throne is still far away," he says. "But every person who reaches it must first pass a door." Then he leaves you there. No ceremony, no blessing, no grand transfer of power. He simply walks into the side corridor and disappears behind a screen, as if the palace has swallowed him back into its walls. A messenger from the Queen Mother arrives first, carrying a sealed wooden token. An attendant from the Empress's wing arrives second, asking for the western gate to remain closed until her mistress sends word. A maid from a frightened concubine comes third, holding no letter, only a sentence trembling behind her teeth. 3 requests, 3 women, 3 futures pressing against one morning. You do not feel powerful. That is what frightens you. Power from this close feels less like command and more like debt. You choose the order carefully. The Queen Mother's token enters the record corridor first, because old secrets poison everything if they are left to leak. The frightened maid enters through the side passage second, because a woman with no paper still deserves a chance to speak before someone writes over her. The Empress's gate remains closed, but only long enough to make her attendants understand that even authority must wait when the palace is already burning somewhere else. No one thanks you, no one dares accuse you. By noon, one rumor has failed. One woman has survived the morning. One minister has lost the advantage of arriving first, and the Emperor will never know that the shape of his day was decided before his chamber door opened. You stand beneath the red lintel, keys cold against your palm, and finally understand the truth the old eunuch tried to teach you from the beginning. The inner palace is not ruled only by crowns, robes, beauty, birth, or imperial favor. It is ruled by access: who enters, who waits, who speaks first, who is delayed long enough to lose. You began as a man no one saw, carrying trays through corridors where important people passed without looking at you. Now, They still try not to look too directly, but for a different reason. They know every door has a keeper, and behind every keeper is a choice that can save a life, ruin a house, protect a queen, silence a concubine, or change what the emperor hears before he decides the fate of everyone beyond the walls. The throne may be far away, shining in a hall of gold and ceremony. But you know the colder truth now. Before power sits on the throne, it waits in front of a door, and every door needs someone willing to decide whether it opens.